Trout Unlimited. It's January 12th, 2010. Tonight we're going to tie the depth charge bird's nest fly. And that was originated by Cal Bird, a fly tyer from California. Actually, it's a nymph pattern. Looks similar to a stonefly nymph, but with the iridescent materials that we use, it shimmers in the water, and you have plenty of sparkle in the water. It's kind of an attractor nymph pattern, stonefly nymph. The depth charge and bird's nest name comes from, of course, the depth charge in World War II when they dropped the depth charges on the submarines. It goes deep. So one thing you use to make it go deep is lead wire. You wrap it with lead wire. And you also use 2 beads, tungsten beads. The first bead you use, that goes on the hook first, is brass, small. And the second bead is a black tungsten. You put the first bead on normally on the hook, but the black tungsten bead, you put the bead on with a large hole on first. And so it nests on top of the brass bead. And so that's where the nest comes from. And Cal Bird is the originator, so it's the bird nest. And he ties it with the lead wire, and that gives it the depth charge name, so it goes deeper. You can tie it without the lead wire if you don't want it to go as deep, and you just call it the bird nest at that point. You use hooks anywhere from a 6 to a 12 streamer type hook, straight hook, not a curved hook, but a straight hook. And we're going to use olive or yellow thread. Of course, I already talked about the beads. And we use ginger or brown goose biots for the antenna and the tail. Rib, we'll use small copper wire for the rib. And the original fly was tied with the synthetic dubbing, peacock and golden color, which you see so many flies with this color on it. Of course, it looks kind of buggy. And this is used for the abdomen. And then the thorax, Mr. Bird used that dubbing, but then he used the guard hairs on a rabbit mask to give it that buggy look. But I thought instead of using the guard hairs, that I would substitute this Rootbeer Taz material. And just right behind the black bead, you'll make a couple wraps, 2 or 3 wraps, and that'll shimmer, give it a better shimmer, and be more of an attractant to the trout as they see it. And it's a little easier to tie, and I think would attract the fish's attention a little bit more than the brown rabbit hair. So I've already got the beads on the hook, and you see how the small bead is on first, then the large hole in the black bead will cause that to nest on the brass bead in front of it and hold it in there tight. So the black bead also looks like part of a thorax or something like that, part of a bony thorax. You pull the black bead back and wrap your thread right behind the brass bead. So you're going to need 4 goose biots here. So you can go ahead and cut 4 goose biots. They kind of jump when you cut them. And turn them, the shiny side in, so it will flare out slightly. Put one right behind that brass bead, and make 2 or 3 wraps there. Tie one in on the other side. Okay, you got 2 angled towards the front of the fly. The next thing I do, I just put a little drop of head cement. We'll tie that down first. And I just use a few half hitches right in there and tie the half hitches right behind the eye of the fly. And you can cut your thread off at that point. And then I just use a drop of head cement on top of that tie off. And you push your black bead up against the brass bead at that point. So after you've already tied it off and put a little head cement back there. Now, retie your thread back behind the black bead and build it up a little bit, give it a little body and a little bulk in behind that bead. And here's when you tie in some lead wrap. This will go right in behind the black bead, and that helps to hold the bead in place also. Let's give it a few wraps. And then tie it, run some thread through that to hold it in place up against the black bead. Keep the black bead from sliding down the hook. And go back to the bend of the hook. And we need to put a little dubbing ball back right at the bend. This is that synthetic dubbing. So we put a little dubbing ball right there. Tie that on real well. And you'll need a couple more goose biots. And the dubbing ball keeps the biots separated, or they won't come together at the back of the hook. It keeps the biots separated. They're a little hard to hold at times. So tie them in pretty good because they're pretty slick and they'll pull out pretty easily. Okay, now we'll tie in a piece of copper wire for the rib. 3-inch piece or so. Alrighty, now we've used some more dubbing. And this will make fairly long abdomen with the this synthetic dubbing. Of course, all these nymphs look very similar, and it's just one version on another nymph, and but it has a good flash to it, and with the antenna and the tail, it adds another dimension. Plus, having the 2 beads makes it a little more interesting, and if a trout sees that and they, just think it's something different to eat. And again, you don't want too much of the edge taz on there, just enough to make it flash right behind that second large bead. So you leave maybe 1/8 of an inch, something like that, behind that bead. You just need a couple wraps, just enough to hide the lead wire and give you something that resembles legs right at the thorax on the insect. And I should have tied the copper wire in first. But this will also work. And sometimes you can bring it in behind the bead, or you can stop it before you get to the edge taz. Either way, it works pretty well. So that's the finished fly. And you can either use the whip finish and tie it off, or sometimes it's difficult when you've got the Goose Biots there to use a whip finish. So I sometimes just use the half hitch and go behind that bead 2 or 3 times, and then you can use your head cement on that. If you do 3 half hitches, that works pretty well also. That's it.